Willkommen. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sean Huggins and this is React with Hugs. Thank you so much for being here. A couple days ago, I checked out a video about the results of the German election, and it was a quick video, but a good one. But today, we have a much longer, so I'm assuming much more in-depth video from Feli from Germany. Check her out, linked in the description as always. But we need to talk about the German election. This video, I think, should be able to give way more detail on what's actually going on over in Germany. As always, I'm curious what you guys have to say about the results of the election, so leave your mustard down in the comment section below. But let's waste no time. Let's hop straight into it. Los geht's.
Germany is electing a new parliament today, and thereby also a new government, and most likely a new chancellor. And leading up to the snap election, there was a lot going on. So let's catch up.
Here we go.
Hello, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio since 2016. In my last video, I gave you an overview of what the different political parties in Germany stand for and who the chancellor candidates are.
That would have been a good one to watch.
Today, I want to catch you up on what happened in Germany since my last update on this whole government crisis in December. So we'll talk about the attacks that happened in Germany, how Elon Musk got involved in German politics, why hundreds of thousands of Germans took to the streets to protest in the last few weeks, and I also want to explain real quick how the German election works, if I'll be able to vote, and what happens after election day. As always, all timestamps are in the video description below. First, let's do a quick recap so we're all on the same page. Previously on German Politics with Feli from Germany. For the last 3 years, Germany's government coalition consisted of the Social Democratic Party SPD, who also got to provide the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, the Green Party, and the FDP, the Free Democrats, were more on the conservative and economically liberal side of the political spectrum. Together, the coalition was also referred to as the Ampelkoalition, so traffic light coalition, due to their party colors. But from the very beginning, the three parties had a lot of disagreements that were often fought out in public, which made the government feel pretty dysfunctional at times. Eventually, on November 6th of last year, Chancellor Olaf Scholz fired Finance Minister Christian Lindner, the head of the FDP, because yet again, they couldn't come to an agreement. This time regarding the 2025 budget. As a consequence, the FDP left the government coalition altogether. And since without them, the SPD and Green Party didn't have a majority in the German parliament anymore, the Bundestag, Chancellor Scholz decided to initiate a snap election by holding a vote of confidence in the Bundestag on December 16th, which he lost, as anticipated. That's why Germany is electing a new parliament in February now, instead of September of 2025, which was when the next election was officially scheduled for. And in Germany's parliamentary system, a new parliament also means that there will be a new government, or administration as you would call it in the US, most likely a coalition of 2 or more parties, and a new chancellor. Well, technically Scholz is running again, but according to the polls, his chances of re-election are very slim. If you want a refresher on how coalitions and the parliamentary system in Germany work, I explained that more in detail in this video from November, and I also explained it in a video back in 2021 for the last German election. I'll link all of those down below. Now, the campaigning phase for this election started in January, and it's been intense to say the least, because there's been a lot going on, both in the political world itself and outside of it.
Attacks.
In the last couple of months, there have been several fatal attacks across Germany that put the whole country in a state of shock and affected the political climate. On December 20th, 2024, just a few days before Christmas, there was a terrible attack at a Christmas market in the eastern German city of Magdeburg, where an SUV was driven into the crowd, killing 6 people and injuring almost 300. In case that sounds familiar to you, something similar happened at a Berlin Christmas market back in 2016, but Despite the additional safety precautions that were supposed to be in place since then, the attacker in Magdeburg managed to enter the market through an unprotected escape route for emergency vehicles. Both the police car and the chain that were supposed to block this path were absent that night. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only security lapse in this incident. The attacker was actually known to the police, and German authorities had received numerous warnings about him, but didn't act on them. It's not quite clear what the motive for the attack was, and the public has honestly been struggling to categorize the perpetrator because he's originally from Saudi Arabia, came to Germany all the way back in 2006. He's been working as a psychologist and psychiatrist in a correctional facility. And despite most people's first assumptions, the attack doesn't seem to have an Islamist background because the attacker has actually left the Muslim religion and has been publicly criticizing it. German authorities even said he was Islamophobic. Apparently, he had also been criticizing Germany for allowing the Islamization of Europe and was a supporter of the German far-right party AfD, who are known for their anti-immigration and anti-Islam stance.
So he is an immigrant, and then he wants to support the anti-immigrant party. I mean, this is what happens in America. People just they vote against their own interests and their own beliefs. It's mind-blowing. I really hope that Germany can learn from America's mistakes, because Americans be dumb and Americans vote against their own interest, as we have seen. And I don't understand it. And this just makes no sense to me. I don't get it.
At the same time, though, he helped Saudi Arabian women flee their homeland and come to Europe, and he believed that the German government heavily discriminated against Saudi immigrants. So all in all, his profile seemed pretty confusing and contradictory to many. But fact is, he was known to the police in over 100 different instances, most of which the investigations were dropped for, and between November of 2020.
Bro. What? Yo, if you have to investigate somebody over 100 times, I don't care if all the charges are dropped or whatever. Bro, if you have to go check somebody out, see what's going on with somebody 100 times, something's going on. Hello?
2023 and September of 2024, the Saudi Arabian government had warned German security authorities about him 3 times. Yet the German authorities dismissed the warnings. According to reports, they thought the Saudi Arabian government was targeting him for being a dissident and abandoning Islam, which is a capital crime in Saudi Arabia. Aside from the official warnings, he also had posted on X in May of 2024 that he was gonna bring justice at any cost and was expecting to die this year. The perpetrator is still alive, by the way. He was arrested directly after the attack, but as of right now, we don't have any answers yet regarding the motive or the shortcomings of the German authorities.
I mean, it's just a crazy person. He is just clearly a crazy person. You can't make sense of it because he's just a crazy person, obviously.
As you can imagine, this case created a lot of outrage for various reasons, and it was politicized too. One day after the attack, anti-immigration protests took place in Magdeburg, which were supported by the AfD, but also included neo-Nazis. And in the following days, there were several incidents where foreign-looking people were violently attacked in Magdeburg. At the same time, thousands of people got together to create a chain of lights holding candles to commemorate the victims and take a stand against racial violence. Unfortunately, just a few weeks after this, on January 22nd, a 20-year-old man from Afghanistan attacked a daycare group in a public park in the Bavarian city of Aschaffenburg with a knife and killed a 2-year-old child and a 41-year-old pedestrian who tried to intervene. In this case, the attacker was actually ausreisepflichtig, so he was supposed to leave the country as his asylum case had been closed, and apparently he had agreed to leave Germany voluntarily in December, but obviously he never actually did. He also had a history of violent behavior and had repeatedly undergone inpatient psychiatric treatment, but was released every time. Authorities couldn't find any indications that this was an Islamist or politically motivated attack, so it was most likely due to mental health issues, but the case is currently still under investigation. But again, the outrage about the shortcomings of the German authorities and the lack of communication between the different agencies involved was pretty big. The federal government and the Bavarian state government actually started blaming each other and argued over who was responsible here. And then, less than 2 weeks ago, on February 13th, there was an attack in my hometown Munich where a 24-year-old immigrant from Afghanistan drove a car into a crowd of protesters from the trade union Verdi, injuring 39 people.
Oh
and
my
unfortunately,
gosh.
2 of the victims, a 37-year-old woman and her 2-year-old daughter, ended up passing away from severe injuries a few days later.
Holy
This attacker
crap.
initially came to Germany in 2016 as an unaccompanied minor, had a legal residence and work permit, and completed his high school diploma and apprenticeship in Germany. So he appeared to be well integrated, but since
What
he
the
shouted
heck?
Allahu Akbar immediately after the attack, this attack did most likely have Islamist motives. After this happened, the city of Munich actually canceled several of the official carnival events that were supposed to take place over the next 2 weeks because they felt like it would have been inappropriate to have a big celebration so close after a tragic event like this. In addition to these recent attacks, there was also a terrible incident in Solingen in northern Westphalia back in August where a Syrian refugee stabbed numerous people at a public street festival, killing 3. This attack was officially claimed by ISIS. And in May of 2024, there was a deadly knife attack in Mannheim in Baden-Württemberg at an anti-Islam rally where a man from Afghanistan stabbed several people and ended up killing 1 police officer.
Holy
the trial
crap.
for this case just started last week, so hopefully that will bring some more answers. I would say those were the attacks that dominated the public discourse over the last year, but there were also several xenophobic and right-wing extremist attacks in 2024, targeting asylum housing, Muslims, Ukrainian soldiers, and there was an anti-Semitic attack at the Israeli consulate in Munich, but the attacker was killed by police before he was able to hurt anyone. Now, obviously, all of those attacks were shocking and extremely sad. I think that's something the German population very much agrees on. But especially the attacks committed by asylum seekers and immigrants fueled the public debate about asylum policies and safety in Germany. And while in early December, most voters named the economy as the #1 issue in this election, the focus shifted a little after these attacks, which is why now migration is considered the most important issue, as this survey shows. And especially in the last few weeks leading up to the election, the attacks were repeatedly brought up during campaigning, especially by parties that advocate for closed borders and a change in German or European asylum law.
Well, I guess that explains the rise in the far-right movement, I would assume.
This includes the AfD, the Union, the FDP, and partly also the BSW. At the same time, a lot of people have pointed out that several of the victims of these attacks were immigrants themselves or had a Migrationshintergrund, as we say in German, a migration background. And people have also pointed out that the crime rate really hasn't gone up a lot in Germany. The numbers for 2024 haven't been released yet, but the crime statistics from 1987 to 2023 show that while overall reported crime numbers have slightly gone up compared to the last few years, they were lower in 2023 than any year between 1993 and 2016.
I mean, that's statistically, that is not bad. Let's be honest. But the real question is what happened in like 1994? Because from here to here, there is a big jump up. No, wait, this is 93. So it would have been 1992. Wait a minute. I was born in 1992. Oh my God. I single-handedly increased the crime rate in Germany for an entire generation of people. I'm so sorry.
It wasn't until 2017 that the crime numbers dropped to a level that was lower than in 2023. However, the numbers for violent crimes specifically are up a bit more, almost at the same level as they were back in 2006 and 2007. So it does make sense that crime and safety is an issue that people worry about. However, and this is my personal opinion real quick, I do feel like the political debate has painted a picture that makes it look a lot worse than it actually is.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that is what politicians do. They prey on fear-mongering of people. And you saw it in America. Seems to be happening in Germany. Obviously, all crime is bad. All violent crime is bad. But if you look at the big picture of things, it doesn't seem to be due to immigration, if you just look at the numbers at least.
because I don't think a lot of people felt particularly unsafe in Germany back in 2006 and 2007. But as we can see, factually, violent crime was higher during those years than it is now. Now let's get to a whole nother topic, and that is Elon Musk.
Oh, God. I've had enough of this freaking...
As you guys know, he's currently the wealthiest man on Earth, and as of recently, in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency.
Doge. This is Doge. What are we even talking about? This is just insane. It's insane. This guy comes to America, starts working in America illegally, uses his family's wealth to buy other people's companies, claim them as his own, never graduates from any university with any accreditations at all, claims to be an engineer and a scientist or whatever. He's neither. He's none of those things. He doesn't invent anything. He doesn't make anything. He buys other people's companies and claims credit for himself. And this guy comes over here and is like, you know what? I got the answers. I'm going to fix America. And now government contracts are rolling in to his companies more now than ever before. Huh. What a coinkydink. Interesting.
Or short, Doge here in the US. But being involved in American politics didn't seem to be enough for him, so he also decided to meddle a little in German politics.
Now he's trying to do the same in Germany, I'm sure. He wants to conquer the world. He wants to get all of the oligarchs of the world together, bring the 1% of the 1% together to rule over the little stupid peasants of the world, one large economy at a time. Start with America. Now he has it. Now let's get to the center of Europe, spread through Europe, and then all of the oligarchs, all of the billionaires of the world can rule over their kingdoms in solidarity. What a great world that we live in.
Well, kind of. It's not like he's running for office or anything, but he did post this in December, shortly before the Magdeburg attack. Only the AfD can save Germany. And on February 13th, right after the attack in Munich, he tweeted, AfD is the only hope for Germany, and there are numerous other posts by him along those lines. So he clearly endorsed a political party.
Can we just let him go to Mars? Can we just speed run him going to Mars and just let him go and then forget that he exists? Can we do that? Can we just blast him off to Mars and leave him there, please?
For the German election, which got a lot of public backlash in Germany. But needless to say, supporters of the AfD mostly embraced his message. For context, the AfD is a far-right party in Germany that's currently polling in second place. I explained a little more in detail in the last video why the party is considered far-right, as well as which policies they want to implement. Again, the video is linked down below. The Federal Office for Protection of the Constitution in Germany even classified the local AfD branches in the states of Thuringia, Saxony, and Saxony-Anhalt as confirmed right-wing extremist groups due to endeavors that go against Germany's constitution and its free democratic basic order. And since 2021, they've also classified the entire party as a suspected extremist group, placing it under government surveillance. In January, Elon even got on a live stream with the AfD chancellor candidate Alice Weidel on his social media platform X. During the 1.5-hour-long live conversation that reached millions of people, they talked about politics, obviously. Musk emphasized how much he supports the AfD, and Weidel said in this live stream that Hitler was a communist, which made major headlines in Germany because it's factually incorrect.
He was a communist, socialist guy.
Even AfD co-founder Alexander Gauland, who was born during World War II, corrected her on this.
Das war natürlich nicht. Es ist auch falsch. Die Kommunisten wurden von den Nazis alle in KZ gesperrt oder umgebracht.
Just to set this straight, Nazi ideology and fascism have nothing to do with communism and have always been considered far-right concepts. A couple weeks after that, Musk even appeared at an AfD campaign rally via video call and, among other things, said that Germany should move beyond their past guilt. This took place just a few weeks after Musk's appearance
just crazy. As an outsider looking in, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to chastise Germans for the past, but the way that he says it makes it seem like, let's just completely forget about the past. You guys made a little boo-boo, but that's fine. Let's forget about it. And, you did nothing wrong. And that, the way that he says it, where it's kind of like, you guys did nothing wrong. It's all good. You did nothing wrong. That's the part that is very scary to me.
At the Trump inauguration, where he made a gesture that looked like a Nazi salute, and a couple days before Holocaust.
Yeah, and there's been a couple of people now in American politics who have brought the salute to the stage since then as well. So, I mean, it's just coming all full circle. History is repeating itself. It's just what it is.
Remembrance Day. So all of this was very controversial, and most German politicians consider Musk's involvement in German politics completely inappropriate. Friedrich Merz from the Conservative Party CDU, or Union, who will most likely be Germany's next chancellor, even called it intrusive and pretentious. Another statement that wasn't very well perceived by German politicians.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is he's South African or whatever. Like, worry about South Africa. I mean, dude, you want to talk about crazy politics? Look at South African politics. They got enough stuff going on there. Why doesn't he give a crap about his own stuff that he got going on in his own home country? Even with America, okay, he immigrated to America and worked in America illegally. Fine, that's fine. That's fine. He was an illegal immigrant for some time. That's fine. Now he lives here. Okay, he can meddle in our elections and throw his billions of dollars around to buy politicians and buy elections and buy more government contracts for his companies in order to rinse and repeat the whole cycle. Fine. I mean, it's corruption at the highest level, but it's fine. At least he lives here, so it's fine. Corruption in your own backyard. Poop where you eat. It's fine. But what the frick does he have anything to do with Germany? He doesn't. I mean, he has some business over there, obviously, but it just doesn't make any sense. I really wish we could just shoot him off to Mars.
And other European countries was the one by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference last week, saying that, quote, free speech is in retreat.
This guy makes me happy to have learned the word Backpfeifengesicht, because now I know the application for it.
In Europe. Right around the same time, there was also a documentary by CBS's 60 Minutes about the prosecution of hate speech in Germany that sparked a very controversial reaction here in the US, but I'll most likely make a separate video about that next week because I don't think this actually interfered as much with the election campaigns per se. Unlike,
to be honest,
this.
Firewall.
On January 29th, German headlines were full of this. Die Brandmauer ist gefallen. So the firewall has fallen. But what does this even mean? So among the political parties...
We're all going to get viruses. Where's my McAfee Windows defense system? Oh my God.
Parties that are currently in the Bundestag, there has been a consensus that there won't be any active collaboration with the far-right party AfD due to the anti-democratic and unconstitutional tendencies the party has shown in the past, meaning no mutual bills, no government coalitions, etc. Those anti-democratic tendencies include discrimination based on people's religious beliefs, which goes against Article 1 of the German Constitution, differentiating between biological Germans and naturalized citizens, which isn't compliant with German law, or attacking the freedom of press, just to name a few.
Yeah, this sounds like exactly what's happening in America. The people that claim to love America the most and want to defend America the most are the ones that are the most hateful and illogical and don't even follow the rules of the great nation, the Constitution, the laws of the land, anything. They just want things to be done their way for their people, their families or friends or whoever, and everybody else can get screwed over. And that's what they want. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
In fact, this consensus not to cooperate with far-right parties in German politics has been a thing ever since the end of World War II. And this agreement has been referred to as the Brandmauer, the firewall. But on January 29th, in the aftermath of the attacks in Magdeburg and Aschaffenburg, Friedrich Merz and his Christian Conservative Party, the Union, submitted a motion for stricter migration policies that both the Union and the FDP party voted yes on, And so did the AfD, without whom this proposal wouldn't have passed. But it did pass. And after that happened, people accused Friedrich Merz that this was a premeditated move on his end, that he willingly and knowingly counted on the AfD votes, even though weeks earlier he had promised not to introduce any bills that would rely on the votes of the AfD before the election. Now, technically, this was only a so-called Entschließungsantrag, so a non-binding motion, basically just a declaration of opinion where the parliament members tell the government, this is something we want. But 2 days later, on January 31st, they did propose an actual bill on new migration laws, but possibly due to all of the outrage and public debate, it surprisingly didn't go through this time and was narrowly rejected. Regardless, the fall of the firewall caused a major outcry all over the country, and hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets over the last few weeks to protest for democracy and diversity and against right-wing extremism. Many also took a stance against the Union and Friedrich Merz.
Like, people are outraged in America, too, at, like, the far-right movement and stuff. And it's like, what do you do besides vote? I mean, you vote and you lose. So what else do you do? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Do you post on social media? Do you go walking around with signs? I mean, does it even do anything? Does protesting like this even do anything? Does public outreach and going viral on social media, complaining about all this stuff, does that do anything? Not really. I mean, nothing really does anything, so I don't even know what to even do about any of this stuff.
In Munich alone, over 250,000 people gathered at Munich Theresienwiese. That's where Oktoberfest takes place. And here in Berlin, it was about 200,000 protesters.
Oh my God.
Die Metapher der Brandmauer ist klar. Und wenn hinter der Brandmauer Feuer liegt, dann muss man löschen. Das ist klar. Und da ist die Zivilgesellschaft angehalten, da ist aber auch die Politik angehalten. Nicht zu zündeln.
Während
Dude, I like that
der
guy.
Anfänge. Wir haben das in 1933 schon erlebt, wie es war. Und ich finde, wir sollten alle jetzt hier ein Zeichen setzen.
Nice.
Ich bin hier, weil
Hold
ich
the
ein
line,
Enkelkind
Germany.
habe, weil ich Angst habe vor der Zukunft, wenn die Rechten weiter Überhand nehmen.
Ich habe einfach Angst vor der Entwicklung im Land. Das macht mir Sorgen. Ich möchte, dass das weniger Fremdenfeindlichkeit gibt.
Ich bin Lehrerin und ich kümmere mich tatsächlich bei uns an der Schule um das Thema Demokratie. Und ich finde es ganz wichtig, hier zu sein.
Die Rechtsradikalen haben Hass, wir haben Haltung und unsere Haltung ist lauter. Wir sehen gerade, dass einige da draußen stehen und meinen, dass wir irgendwie gleichgültig unserer Demokratie gegenüber wären. Das sind wir garantiert nicht. Wir sind wehrhaft und wir sind hier, wir sind laut, wir sind viele und wir lassen uns nicht einschüchtern.
Ganz viele Menschen sind extrem besorgt, dass der Rechtsextremismus sich weltweit wieder ausbreitet. Trump ist an die Macht gekommen. In unserem Nachbarland Österreich droht ein Rechtsextremer, wie er selber sagt, Volkskanzler zu werden. Und wir wollen dafür sorgen, dass das in diesem Land hier nicht passiert.
Whoa, a far-right guy got elected in Austria, too?
Even Holocaust survivors have been speaking out about this. 99-year-old Albrecht
Weinberg,
who survived Auschwitz and 2 other concentration camps as a young adult, actually returned his Bundesverdienstkreuz to the German government. The Bundesverdienstkreuz, or Federal Order of Merit Award, is the highest tribute the country of Germany can pay to individuals for services to the nation. But Weinberg said that when he talks about the Holocaust at schools, he always emphasizes how important it is to speak up against the rise of right-wing extremism. So he wants to live up to his own standards and demonstrate his disapproval of democratic parties cooperating with far-right politics. Margot Friedländer, another Holocaust...
Dude, that guy is an inspiration to... Like, what? He survived 2 or 3 concentration camps? What? I mean, unreal.
A survivor has been warning about the current political developments in Germany for a while now. Here's a snippet from an interview she gave in March of 2024.
Es kann geschehen. Man sieht ja jetzt, was gewesen ist.
Oh, this is scary.
So hat es damals auch angefangen. Es darf nicht. Es ist für euch, für eure Zukunft, für die eurer Kinder und für die Demokratie.
Was ist es, was Sie heute beobachten, wie es damals auch angefangen hat?
Der Hass ist jetzt wieder laut geworden, der damals aufgestachelt wurde. Was ist es? Es sind Menschen, die Menschen nicht anerkennen als Menschen Und ihr seid alle gleich. Wir werden alle auf dieselbe Art und Weise geboren. Es gibt keine christliches, muslimisches oder jüdisches Blut. Es gibt nur menschliches Blut.
Wow.
Und das ist, was ich euch sage. Respektiert Menschen.
I mentioned this in the last video, but just last month, the AfD branch in Karlsruhe distributed 30,000 of these fake plane tickets as part of the election campaign that landed in the mailboxes of people with foreign-sounding names. What looks like a boarding pass is a political message saying that illegal immigrants
go back to your country. Sounds familiar. A lot of people say stuff like that in America. Interesting.
Take a one-way trip to their safe country of origin, and that only remigration could save Germany. What lots of Germans consider very problematic about this is the fact that these tickets are almost an exact replica of these tickets that the neo-Nazi party NPD had distributed in 2011 and 2013.
Oh.
And they also follow the footsteps of these fake train tickets from the 1920s and 30s that told Jewish people to go back to Jerusalem and Palestine, and even suggested that they should die on the way there. I explained all of this in more detail in a YouTube short recently that I'll link up here for you and in the video description. In the aftermath of all of this, Merz has repeatedly stated that all of this was just an unfortunate coincidence and that his position on not wanting to collaborate with the AfD stays unchanged. Throughout this campaign, he emphasized that the union won't form a coalition with the AfD and won't negotiate with them on motions or legislation. Whether people trust him on that or not is another question. Now, I know this is something that a lot of you asked about in the comments last time. Is that even allowed to just completely rule out working with another party, especially when they're ranking second in the polls? And the answer to that is yes. That's actually pretty common, because in a parliamentary system like we have in Germany, after a new parliament is elected, the parties need to figure out which ones get to form the government. But since usually none of the parties get over 50% of the votes all by themselves, the parties need to team up with each other, aka form a coalition, to reach that 50%. And in order to do so, they need to find some kind of common ground, they need to make compromises, and eventually sign a coalition agreement. Those negotiations can often take weeks or even months. In 2017, for Merkel's last term, it took them almost half a year to come to an agreement.
Damn.
And depending on the party's political orientation, some of them are more flexible in who they'd be able to collaborate with than others, but most parties won't be able to find compromises with everyone. The Union, for example, has declared years ago that they not only rule out working with the AfD, but also with the left party. The SPD too, even though they are on the center-left of the political spectrum, say that they don't want to form a coalition with the left party, nor with the BSW.
Okay.
Given how the last coalition ended, the FDP doesn't want to work with the Green Party anymore, and I'd honestly be surprised if they'd want to work with the SPD in the near future. And even members of the CSU, which is part of the Union, are against working with the Green Party, even though that coalition has been considered the second most likely outcome for this election. But according to the current polls, they don't even have the numbers for this anymore.
Oh, wow.
And regardless, it's much more likely that the Union will try to form a coalition with the SPD. Now, it also happens that parties enter negotiations for a coalition and then don't come to an agreement after all, in which case they could try it with another party. Or if none of the parties can come to an agreement, there might even have to be new elections. At the end of the day, the whole concept of a parliamentary system is that the parties have to make compromises and come together, but there has to be enough common ground to do so, and it's totally normal and has always been the case that not every party wants to work with every other party.
What's next?
That's what's going to happen after the election on Sunday. The parties that make it back into the parliament will have to figure out who will get to form the government coalition. And as I mentioned, the most likely one is Union and SPD, but it really also depends on what happens with the smaller parties. The Left Party, the BSW, and the FDP are all polling relatively low. And just as a reminder, a party has to get more than 5% to even enter parliament.
Ooh.
Currently, it looks like the Left Party will pass that threshold and the other two won't, in which case the parliament would have 5 parties total, which means that this coalition would be possible number-wise. But if, let's say, all 3 of these smaller parties make it into parliament, there will most likely need to be a coalition of 3 instead of just 2 parties to make it over 50%. And as we just experienced with the previous government, 3-party coalitions are just a lot more complicated to navigate and usually not as stable. So I think most Germans are hoping for a 2-party coalition this time. Then, once the coalition has formed, the parliament officially elects the chancellor, and the parties that are part of the coalition obviously vote for the same candidate, and then they can start putting together their cabinet. But before we get to the results, people first need to vote.
All right.
Now, I already explained how the German election system works in my video from 2021, and I'm not going to go into as much detail today, but since then, there have actually been some changes that will be in place for the very first time this year. So this is new to all of us Germans too. Generally, German citizens don't have to actively register to vote, like it's the case here in the US, because they're already registered with the Einwohnermeldeamt, the resident registration office. So every citizen over the age of 18 who has lived in Germany for at least 3 months will automatically receive their Wahlbenachrichtigung, notification of election, in the mail. Then on election day, which in Germany is always a Sunday, you'll just go to your polling location, which is often an elementary school, town hall, or another public building, show your notification and ID, and fill out the paper ballot. Or of course, you can also request an absentee ballot a few weeks in advance. Now in Germany, we don't directly elect our chancellor, but instead we elect the parliament, which then forms the government, as we just talked about. So on the ballot, Germans have 2 votes. With your Erststimme, first vote, you vote for a direct candidate from your constituency. Germany is divided into 299 constituencies, so this first part of the ballot will look different depending on where you live. And this one is a winner-takes-it-all concept, so the candidate with the most votes in the constituency gets the direct candidacy and therefore a seat in the Bundestag. With your Zweitstimme, the second vote, you vote for a party, and this is the vote that defines how many seats each party gets in the parliament, as long as they receive more than 5% of the votes. This is called the 5%-Hürde, the 5% hurdle. If a party doesn't pass that hurdle, or alternatively, if they don't get at least 3 direct candidates with the first vote, they won't be represented in the Bundestag at all. In the past, all of the direct candidates who won their constituencies in the first vote were guaranteed a seat in the Bundestag. However, sometimes a party won more direct candidates than they were granted seats according to the second vote. So to make sure that the overall percentage stayed the same, all of the other parties were given additional seats too. The downside of that was that over the last few terms, the Bundestag has gotten bigger and bigger. Currently, it's at a record high of 733 representatives, and almost all politicians agree that that's simply too large for a country of 85 million people. Plus, it's expensive. For comparison, the House of Representatives here in the US only has 435 members for a country of 330 million people. That's why there have been countless proposals over the years to change the election system, and in 2023, they finally passed one. Well, for now. The German Supreme Court didn't allow for all of the changes to go through, so it's kind of a temporary solution. The new rule is that the Bundestag will always have exactly 630 members, which means that the direct candidates from the first vote will now only be given a seat if their party has enough seats via the second vote. If they don't have enough seats, some of the direct candidates simply won't make it into parliament after all. This year particularly, I know that a lot of people are voting strategically, is what it's called, meaning that you might not straight up vote for the party that you agree with the most, but for the party that's most likely to bring a certain outcome.
Yeah, that definitely happens in America a lot. I mean, we kind of only have 2 parties, basically. So we have other parties, but you don't hear about them because no one votes for them because it's kind of pointless because they're not going to win anyway. So everyone just votes for the 2 parties. So I get it.
This can take take on many different shapes and forms, but for example, if you agree most with the FDP, but in your constituency the two candidates most likely to win are from the Union and the SPD, you might vote for the Union candidate to ensure their win because it's still closer to your beliefs than the SPD candidate. That would be strategic voting. Or I know that many people have decided to vote for the Left Party this year, even though they never did in the past, but they want to make sure that the Left Party makes it past the 5% hurdle back into parliament and can then act as an opposition party. Or if the party you agree most with is one of the really small parties that definitely won't make it into parliament, maybe you don't want to feel like you wasted your vote and decide to vote for one of the larger parties instead that you don't agree with as much, but that are still close enough and that you know are going to be in parliament. Or maybe you choose to do the exact opposite and vote for the small party after all, because votes do also help small political parties to get traction and even public funding. Or I know that some people this year have decided to vote for the SPD, even though they usually align with more left-leaning parties, but they want to ensure that a two-party coalition will be possible. I know that's all very theoretical and a little complex, but of course, many voters still also just simply vote for the party that they agree with the most, and there are actually some pretty handy tools in Germany that can help you find out which party that is. One of those is the Wahlomat, where you answer different questions about which policies you agree or disagree with, and then it tells you which party's election program aligns most with your views.
Oh, dude, that would be fun. Wahlomat. Yo, I should do this for a video.
And you can compare the results for different parties. This year, there's also the Realomat, which instead of comparing the election programs, looks at how the parties have actually voted on these issues in the past, which is a pretty cool idea. However, what's tricky about that one is that the parties that are in a coalition together usually vote together. So in the last 3 years, the FDP, for example, always voted the same as the SPD and the Green Party, even though those three parties technically represent very different values. Last but not least, a lot of you wanted to know if I'm able to vote, and the answer is Jein. Technically, as a German citizen, I am eligible to vote. However, my ballot still hasn't arrived here, so unfortunately, I won't be able to cast my vote in time. This is actually an issue that hundreds of thousands of Germans living abroad are dealing with this time, because apparently, due to the election taking place early, the ballots weren't sent out early enough, and for people who live pretty far away from Germany, like me, they just didn't arrive in time. There's even a petition by Germans living abroad demanding that no vote should get lost like this, and that authorities need to ensure earlier shipping in the future or modernize the voting system so that people can vote online, for example. Now, with the campaigning phase being in its final stretch, the chancellor candidate and the leading politicians of the smaller parties truly appeared on every YouTube channel in the last few weeks, on every social media format, every political talk show, and of course there were also several TV debates. There were some with just Scholz and Merz, which were surprisingly civil and calm. They actually agreed on a lot of points and even invited each other to join their respective hobbies.
Herr Scholz, Friedrich Merz ist ja Hobbypilot. Würden Sie zu ihm ins Flugzeug steigen, sich von ihm fliegen lassen?
Ja.
Warum?
Ich nehme an, er hat den Pilotenschein zurecht.
Jetzt fragen Sie mich auch noch, ob ich ihn mitnehmen würde.
Nein, ich
don't even look like freaking both humans.
Es kommt drauf an, von wo
One's
nach
so
wo.
tall,
Also
one's
zum
so
Beispiel
tiny.
von Berlin nach Hause nach Hamburg, ja, biete ich ihn an.
The debates with all four candidates got a little more heated and chaotic, but overall, they didn't really change much in the polls. We still see the exact same order as before here, except that Merz lost a few votes and more people said they're unsure about who they'd prefer as chancellor, but we don't directly vote for that anyways.
All right, well, interesting times that we live in. I guess we can only wait and see what happens. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on the video and I guess the results of the election. Leave your mustard down in the comments section below. But that's all the time that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.